Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and when that foundation starts to crack, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, subtly, almost quietly, until one day you realize you've been standing on unstable ground. Most people think betrayal is obvious. They imagine it as one explosive moment where everything becomes clear. But in real life, disloyalty is stealthy. It doesn't walk into your life wearing a warning sign. It slips in through the back door, hides in the shadows, and tests your awareness. That's why it's crucial to understand that the early signs are rarely dramatic. They're small, almost dismissible at first glance. But if you learn to spot them, you'll see the truth long before the damage becomes irreversible. The first and most telling sign is inconsistency between his words and his actions. This is where you need to train yourself to become an observer, not just a listener. A loyal man doesn't just speak his commitment. He lives it. His actions line up with what he tells you. When he says he'll be somewhere, he's there. When he promises to help you with something, it gets done. But when loyalty starts to slip, the first thing you'll notice is that his words lose their weight. He tells you one thing, but does another. He starts making promises he doesn't keep, or delivering only halfway on what he agreed to. And it won't always be big, obvious betrayals. Sometimes it's in the details. Agreeing to call you back and forgetting, planning something with you, but canceling last minute without urgency, or telling you he's too busy to see you, but somehow finding the time for other people or activities. If you brush these things off, you'll convince yourself it's nothing. You'll say, he's just stressed, or it's a busy time for him. But here's the truth: when someone values you, they find ways to show it consistently, even in small ways. Inconsistency is often the first red flag because it's a testing ground. He's checking, consciously or unconsciously, how much you'll tolerate before you push back. If you let these things slide without addressing them, he learns that the boundaries of the relationship are flexible. And that's when the cracks start to widen. The second sign is emotional withdrawal. And it's much harder to spot because it's not about what he does, but about what he stops doing. In the beginning, he was engaged. He cared about your thoughts, your feelings, your day-to-day life. He asked questions, listened to your answers, and seemed genuinely invested in what was happening in your world. But slowly, that fades. He becomes distracted during conversations, checking his phone more often, giving shorter responses, or not asking about your life at all. You might notice that when you share good news, he doesn't react with the same excitement as before. When you talk about your struggles, his empathy feels absent or forced. It's like he's physically there, but mentally somewhere else. This shift can happen for many reasons, but in the context of disloyalty, it's a form of detachment. Emotional distance often comes before physical or moral betrayal. It's a way of easing himself out of the emotional bond so that when he does act disloyally, it feels less like a betrayal to him. He's already been stepping away in his mind, so the act feels like a continuation rather than a rupture. This is why you need to notice when the emotional connection changes. A man who's loyal will stay engaged even through hard times. A man who's disloyal will start building emotional walls while you're still trying to hold the door open. The third sign is secrecy. Let's be clear. Privacy and secrecy are not the same thing. Privacy is healthy. It's about maintaining your individuality and having space to breathe in a relationship. Secrecy is about hiding things that shouldn't need to be hidden. If you've always had open communication, and suddenly he's guarding his phone like it contains classified information, that's not just a quirk. It's a change in behavior you need to pay attention to. If he starts deleting messages, changing passwords without telling you, or stepping outside to take calls that he used to answer in front of you, that's not privacy, it's concealment. A loyal man has nothing to hide from you, because he's not doing anything that would threaten your trust. Sure, he might want to keep certain things personal, but it won't be coupled with sudden behavioral changes or defensiveness. Disloyalty thrives in the dark. When someone starts creating little pockets of secrecy in their life, it's because they're trying to protect something. Not protect themselves from you, but protect their actions from being exposed to you. The fourth sign is defensiveness when questioned. You bring up something that's bothering you, and instead of listening or calmly explaining, he flips the script. Suddenly, you're the problem. He accuses you of being paranoid, controlling, or overly sensitive. He raises his voice, changes the subject, or makes you feel guilty for even asking. This isn't normal, and it's not healthy. A loyal man welcomes conversations about the relationship because he has nothing to hide and nothing to fear from your questions. A disloyal man will use defensiveness as a shield to deflect attention away from the truth. He's not reacting to your tone. He's reacting to the possibility that you're getting too close to discovering something he doesn't want you to know. Pay attention to this reaction because it's one of the most telling. People who have nothing to hide can remain calm, even when faced with uncomfortable questions. They don't need to create drama to distract you from the issue at hand. But a man who's being disloyal will feel cornered by your questions, even if you're asking gently. His defensiveness is less about you and more about protecting himself. The fifth sign is a shift in priorities. This is where loyalty, or the lack of it, becomes impossible to hide. In the beginning, you were a priority. He made time for you, celebrated with you, and showed up when you needed him. But when loyalty starts to fade, so does that level of commitment. He begins investing more time and energy into other people, hobbies, or commitments, often at the expense of your relationship. And when you bring it up, he'll justify it with excuses. He's busy, stressed, tired, or going through something. Those reasons may be true to some extent, but the reality is, people make time for what matters to them. If you notice that you're consistently pushed to the bottom of the list, that's not just about business, it's about a shift in priorities. This change doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual, like erosion. A canceled dinner here, a forgotten date there, a missed call that turns into 2, then 3. Eventually, you start to feel like you're competing for his attention instead of naturally having it. That's when you need to face the truth. Loyalty isn't just about staying faithful in action. It's about showing up for the relationship in all the small, consistent ways that tell you you're valued. When you step back and connect the dots, inconsistency, emotional withdrawal, secrecy, defensiveness, and a shift in priorities, you start to see the bigger picture. These aren't isolated incidents, they're patterns. And patterns tell the truth long before the words do. Most people miss these signs because they don't want to see them. They'd rather hold on to the idea of what the relationship used to be than face the reality of what it's becoming. But ignoring the signs doesn't make them disappear. It just gives them more time to grow. When you begin to recognize the signs of a disloyal man, your first instinct might be to confront him immediately, demand answers, or express all the hurt and confusion you're feeling. That's a natural human response. You want resolution, you want the truth, you want to know where you stand. But here's the reality: emotional reactions, especially when they're intense, can muddy the waters instead of clarifying them. Disloyalty feeds on confusion. When you lose control of your emotions, you risk losing control of the situation. That's why the first thing you must do is steady yourself. Get calm, get clear, and focus on gathering facts instead of chasing feelings. Clarity is your armor in situations like this. Without it, you're vulnerable, not just to his behavior, but to your own fears and insecurities. You have to understand the difference between a moment of frustration in a relationship and an ongoing pattern of disrespect. One canceled plan might mean nothing. 3 canceled plans in a row, especially without a valid reason, is telling. One distracted conversation might be because he's tired. A constant lack of engagement signals emotional withdrawal. This is where you must train yourself to observe patterns over time instead of reacting to isolated incidents. Disloyalty is rarely an accident. It's a series of choices, and those choices reveal themselves through repetition. Once you start to see these patterns, you need to document them, not necessarily in a literal diary, though that can help, but in your mind with precision. Remember the details. What was said, what was done, how he reacted when you expressed concern. You're not building a case to prosecute him in a courtroom, but you are collecting enough evidence to make an informed decision about whether this relationship is worth saving. Without this clarity, you risk guessing yourself and being swayed by temporary displays of affection or empty promises designed to keep you in place. The next step is to examine your own boundaries, because disloyalty doesn't just harm you through what the other person does. It harms you through what you allow. Every time you excuse a breach of trust, every time you let something slide without addressing it, you're essentially teaching him how to treat you. If he knows that an apology, a gift, or a charming explanation will reset the slate, then what's his incentive to change? People repeat the behavior they can get away with. That's why you must decide, clearly and firmly, what you will and will not accept. Boundaries are not walls meant to push people away. They are the lines that define how you expect to be treated. They are a way of communicating your worth without shouting it. A loyal partner will respect those lines because he respects you. A disloyal man will test them, push them, or dismiss them entirely. You have to be ready for that, and you have to be willing to follow through when those boundaries are crossed. Because the truth is, boundaries mean nothing if they're not enforced. You can't draw a line and then watch it be erased without consequence. When you realize your boundaries are being violated, it's not always about making a grand exit right away. Sometimes the best move is to create space, not just physical space, but emotional distance. When someone senses that you're no longer as available to them, no longer as easily swayed by their charm or excuses, they start to reveal their true colors. A man who values you will notice that space and try to close it by earning back your trust. A disloyal man will either grow frustrated because he can't manipulate you as easily, or he'll continue drifting away, confirming what you already suspected. Creating this space also gives you the chance to reconnect with yourself. Disloyalty has a way of eroding self-esteem because it makes you question your worth and your ability to judge character. You might catch yourself thinking, maybe I'm overreacting, or maybe I'm not enough. That's why you need to pull back and invest in yourself. Spend time on your own goals, surround yourself with people who value and respect you, and do things that remind you of your independence. The stronger and more self-assured you become, the harder it is for anyone, loyal or not, to diminish your value. At the same time, you have to resist the temptation to constantly test his loyalty. Checking his phone when he's not looking, driving by his usual spots, interrogating him about his whereabouts. These things might give you temporary reassurance, but they also keep you locked in a cycle of mistrust. If you have to constantly search for proof that he's being honest, the relationship is already broken in some way. Trust is not built on surveillance. It's built on consistency and mutual respect. If you can't trust him without constant verification, then you need to ask yourself why you're still in the relationship in the first place. When you do decide to address the issue directly, the way you approach it matters. Avoid starting with accusations because they tend to trigger defensiveness rather than honesty. Instead, focus on describing what you've observed and how it makes you feel. For example, instead of saying, "You're hiding things from me," you might say, "I've noticed you've been taking calls outside lately, and it makes me feel like you don't want me to know who you're talking to." This approach doesn't guarantee honesty, but it keeps the focus on your perspective and your feelings, which are harder to dismiss without revealing his own defensiveness. If his response is genuine, you'll feel it, not just hear it. Words are easy, consistent actions are not. Watch what he does after that conversation. Does he make an effort to be more transparent, to show up emotionally, to prioritize you again? Or does he dismiss your concerns, get irritated, and then go back to the same behavior as before? Disloyal men often give just enough effort to keep you from leaving, but not enough to truly rebuild trust. They rely on the hope that you'll accept crumbs because you're afraid of losing the whole loaf. This is where your self-respect becomes non-negotiable. You have to decide that you would rather be alone than in a relationship that constantly makes you question your worth. That decision is powerful because it shifts the dynamic. You're no longer waiting for him to choose you. You're choosing yourself. And once you do that, you stop accepting the bare minimum from anyone. It's also important to understand that loyalty is not something you should have to earn through proving yourself or fighting for his attention. True loyalty is freely given, consistent even when you're not around to monitor it. It's not conditional on your behavior, your appearance, or your ability to make him happy. If his loyalty only exists when it's convenient for him, then it's not loyalty at all. It's convenience disguised as commitment. When you find yourself constantly on edge, unsure of where you stand, waiting for the next disappointment, you have to see that for what it is. That's not love. That's not partnership. That's emotional instability, and it's designed, whether intentionally or not, to keep you dependent on his approval. This dynamic is toxic because it trains you to work harder for less, to lower your expectations, and to accept behavior you never would have tolerated before you met him. So the real question becomes, what do you want your future to look like? If you stay, will you spend the next year, 5 years, or 10 years trying to secure the loyalty of someone who should have given it from the start? Or will you reclaim your time, your energy, and your self-respect to make room for someone who doesn't make you question where you stand? That choice is yours. And the sooner you make it with clarity and conviction, the sooner you free yourself from the exhausting cycle of doubt and disappointment.